Hi everyone, good morning or good afternoon. Welcome back to Self-Care. I'm joining you guys today via a video recording. For some, I may not be able to be with you live today. I'm gonna be rotating my live classes, and then for the other sessions, we'll be doing video recordings. I hope everybody had a restful night, a good night's rest, and that your week is off to a good start. So yesterday in our self-care class, we talked about what mindfulness was. Okay, I want to give you guys a couple of minutes to answer in the chat box what your, just in a couple of words, if you can remember what the definition of mindfulness is and or what you learned, maybe just a few words. Go ahead and enter that into the chat box. Miss Anna's going to be taking a look at your responses. Hopefully most of you remember that mindfulness is being aware of your present moment, being mindful, paying attention in a particular way to the present moment that you're in. And I hope that for the next 45 minutes or so, you can practice mindfulness throughout this class. Whenever you find your mind wandering off until something, onto something that you have planned for later or tomorrow or the weekend. We're close to the weekend now, right? So it's hard not to be distracted. But I hope that you can practice paying attention to this particular moment that we're in right now. So that's what mindfulness was, and I hope some of you remembered that. I also want to get a few, I want to see if any of you had an opportunity to read that poem that we talked about, the autobiography. I hope that you guys were able to reread that, and if you didn't read it, again, maybe you remember or were able to reflect on maybe what that poem meant. And I'm going to just summarize what I think the poem meant, or what it meant to me the first time I read it. So if you remember, the poem talks about somebody that's walking down the street and they fall into a hole, and it's an imaginary hole, right? But it's a very deep hole, and the person gets lost and they don't know how to get out of that deep hole. In the next chapter, the person is walking down the same street. They see the hole, but they fall in again, and they still haven't quite figured out how to get out of that hole. And so it still takes them a while, and they feel like it's not their fault that they fell in the hole. The hole just happens to be on the street that they're walking on. The next chapter says, the person's walking down the street, they see the hole, they fall in again, but now they know where they're at. Now they remember, oh, I remember this hole. And they're able to climb out, but it takes a while, but they're still able to get out of the hole. The fourth chapter, let's see if I can remember this correctly. The fourth chapter, again, the person's walking down the street, they see the hole, and instead of falling into the hole, instead of walking right into it, they go around the hole and they keep going. And the fifth chapter, or the fifth part of the poem, says the person is going for a walk, and instead of going down that same street with the hole, they take a different street. So what that poem kind of meant to me was, a lot of times we can get trapped in our sometimes in our emotional responses towards people. Maybe you have somebody that always makes you upset. Every time you talk to them, they upset you, whether it's a friend or a family member. And the way that this poem relates to mindfulness is, we can learn to be aware of some of these traps, of some of these emotions that certain people bring out of us. And instead of every time allowing that person or that situation to bother us, we can learn to avoid it. Either avoid it completely, which in some cases, well, that's not possible, right? We can't avoid certain people completely, especially our parents or some of our friends. But we can learn how to avoid certain traps or certain situations that we know are going to bother us or upset us. That's the definition of mindfulness. That's basically a very long, I would say, story or definition. If you have to expand on the definition of mindfulness, it's exactly that. It's being aware of certain things, either in your life or part of yourself that affect you, and learning how to navigate or learning how to avoid them. So I hope some of you, if you didn't, maybe you had a different thought about it, you can absolutely put it into the chat box or send me an email. I'm interested to see what you guys thought of or how that poem may be related to you. I'm curious to see what you guys thought. So moving on, what I'd like to start with today, I'd like to sort of get a gauge of where I have an assessment for you guys. It's not a test. It's a form, and it's a score sheet basically. And I'd like to get an idea of some of the stress levels that you guys are dealing with right now. And by filling this out, it's going to give not just me, but yourself an idea of where your stress levels are. Okay, why is that important? Because especially right now, with what we're dealing with the virus going on and being stuck, not able to go certain places, it's good to know and to be aware, to be mindful of your stress levels so that you can pay attention to yourself, take care of yourself, maybe spend a little extra time on self-care when you need it, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so that you guys can see this assessment. Oops. Okay, so here it is. What I'd like you guys to do, go ahead and, well, first of all, let me, whoops. Okay, let me just pull up this for now. Okay, you guys, I know it says that my name is Matthew Lederman. That's what I was trying to change. That is not my name, as you clearly know, but this is the meeting invitation account we're using. Okay. All right, so here it is. Make it bigger. What I want you guys to do is to get a pen and paper. You can use your Rocketbook. Let me give you a minute or so to grab that. So get something that you can write with, because I want you to keep a tally. It might be good if whatever paper you grab has has lines on it. It doesn't have to, but for me, writing on lines is a little bit easier. Okay, so this assessment is called the Holmes-Rahe Stress Scale for Youth. Okay, so this is geared specifically for people in your age range. And what you have below is a list of several different events that might be common for people in your age group, okay? And so what it says there at the top is it says in the last 12 months, check the items that you've had to deal with or cope with. At the end, you will be able to put your past year, the past year in perspective. So this is going to give you an idea of where maybe your stress is at right now, but even where it's been over the last year, okay? All right, so get ready. I'm going to read the list. I'm going to go down the list. And if one of the things that I say, one of the events that I mentioned has happened to you in the last year, in the last 12 months, I want you to write the number down that's next to it, and I'll read it out so that way you can write it down. So really, if you don't need to look at the screen, you can just write it down on a sheet of paper. You're not going to show this to anyone, and you're not going to turn this in, okay? So you don't need to write down what the event was. I just want you to write down the number, okay, the value. And then so you're going to have a whole list of numbers, and then we're going to do some math at the end, okay? All right. So the first event is the death of a parent, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, a spouse, and if anyone's married. I'm not sure that anyone is, but if you have experienced a death of a loved one, I want you to write down 100. So the death of a family member or a friend, boyfriend, girlfriend, if you've had that happen in the last 12 months, write down 100, okay? The next one is divorce. If you yourself have been divorced, or if your parents have been divorced in the last 12 months. Okay, so just in the last 12 months, if your parents separated or divorced, I want you to write down the number 65. Okay. In the last 12 months, if you feel that you have just entered into puberty. So just to clarify what that means, maybe you started to experiencing some changes, some physical changes in your body. Maybe your voice for young men, maybe your voice started to change. Maybe you started to grow hair in different areas on your body than before. If this has just started for you in the last year, in the last 12 months, I want you to write down 65. If it happened to you before that, if you've had those changes, but they happened to you more than a year ago, don't write anything down. So remember, it's just in the last year. Pregnancy. If you or maybe a girlfriend has had a pregnancy in the last year, I want you to write down the number 65. If you've had a breakup in the last year, breakup with a boyfriend or a girlfriend that you've gone through in the last year, go ahead and write down 60. Okay. If you've been to jail, if you've been to, or you've been put on probation, so if you've gotten in some kind of legal trouble in the last year, go ahead and put down 60. If you've had the loss of a family member that's not a parent, not a boyfriend or girlfriend, but maybe a grandparent, an aunt, or an uncle. If that's happened to you in the last year, go ahead and put down 60. If you've had a broken off engagement, so if you were engaged to be married and it was broken off in the last year, put down 55. If you have had a serious personal injury or illness in the last year, put down 45. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I skipped one. Engagement. If you've been engaged, if you got engaged to be married in the last year, put down 50. And then the next one is if you have had a serious personal injury or illness, put down 45. So if you've had to be in the hospital for an extended period of time, or you got in a car accident, or you broke a bone, the score is 45. If you got married in the last year, the score is 45. If you entered college, so that's nobody yet, but if you're starting, for those, this probably would only apply to 8th graders going to 9th graders. So starting high school, I want you to write down 45. Change in independence or responsibility. So let's say in the last year, you became responsible for caring for a grandparent or caring for one of your siblings. So you took on the role of a caretaker in the last year. That is a score of 45, so write that down. So hopefully by now you guys are starting to have some numbers, well, hopefully not too many of them, but you're starting to write some numbers down in a column, okay? The next one, if you've had any drug or alcohol use in the last year, so if you've used drugs or alcohol in the last year, go ahead and write down 45. If you've been fired or expelled from school in the last year, write down 45. If you had a change in alcohol or drug use, so let's say you increased or you decreased alcohol or drug use that you may or may not have had, hopefully not, go ahead and put a 45. Okay, reconciliation with a mate, family, or boyfriend or girlfriend. So you got back together with a boyfriend or girlfriend. If you got back together with someone that you were in a relationship, that's a score of 40, 40. Trouble at school, you got a referral in the last year, score of 40. Serious health problem of a family member. So if your parent or anyone in your family was diagnosed with a serious health condition, you're going to go ahead and write down 40. If you've had to work while you're also attending school, so any of you that are working and going to school, write down 35. If you're working more than 40 hours a week, for those of you who are working, write down 35. Changing course of study. This probably won't apply to you guys. It's probably more for college level students, so we'll skip that one. Change in frequency of dating. So let's say you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, you were seeing them every day and now you only see them once a month because they moved away, or once every other month. So let's say maybe if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, maybe they went to a different school. If that has happened, score of 35. Okay, this bottom one down here, sexual adjustment problems. This is going to apply to if you've had any issues with coming out as gay, or as maybe you're struggling with your sexual identity, that's going to be a score of 35. So if you've been dealing with that in the last 12 months, go ahead and write down a score of 35. Okay, let's go back up to the next column. So I'm hoping you guys are keeping up with me. I'm going to move a little bit faster now. And again, I hope you're just writing down the numbers. You don't need to write down the actual event, okay? Gain of a new family member. So if anyone in your family, if your parent has had a baby, a new baby, or let's say your mom or your dad remarried and you've got some new family members, that's a score of 35. Change in work responsibilities for those of you that have jobs. If you got a new role, a new title, new responsibilities at work, that's a score of 35. Change in financial state. I think a lot of us can kind of, you know, say that maybe this is going on, especially now with the virus and things shutting down. So if you lost a job, or if your parents lost their job because of the virus, go ahead and write down 30. It's a score of 30. Death of a close friend, not a family member. If you already wrote this down earlier, because we did talk about the death of, you know, that was one of the big ones, the number 100 points. If you already wrote this down, don't write it again. But let's say just somebody you knew, an acquaintance, or somebody that you knew from school passed away, score of 30. If you change jobs completely, write down 30. If you started a new job. Change in number of arguments with mate, family members, or friends. In the last year, if you've noticed that you're getting into more arguments with your parents, more arguments with your boyfriend or girlfriend, or with your friends, go ahead and write down a score of 30. If you sleep less than 8 hours per night, go ahead and write down a score of 25. If you've gotten into trouble with your boyfriend or your girlfriend's family, maybe you don't really get along with your boyfriend or your girlfriend's family, score of 25. If you have been able to keep straight A's, outstanding personal achievement, in the past year, that's stressful. That's a score of 20. So if you've been able to maintain a 4.0 or straight A's in the last year, go ahead and write down 20. If your parents lost their job or stopped working in the last year, write 20. If you already wrote that down like above, change in financial status, don't write it again. Okay, so just if your parents lost their job or stopped working, it's a score of 20. You're beginning or you're ending school, that's going to be everyone, right? So everybody write down 20 for that one. Change in living conditions. So you moved. If any of you have moved to a new neighborhood, 20 points. Change in personal habits. In the last year, if you started smoking, or in the last year, if you started exercising regularly, or you started a diet, you started dieting, 20 points. Chronic allergies. Okay, sometimes people down here in the valley have a lot of problems with allergies. If that's you, you're having to constantly take medicines and you feel allergies all the time, allergy problems, 20 points. Troubles with a boss, so anyone that's working. For those of you not working, that wouldn't apply. Change in work hours. So maybe you were working consistently and your work hours changed, 15 points. Change in residence. Again, we talked about that. That seems like we've already done it, but let's say you moved in from living with your mom to living with your dad. That's 15 points. Change to a new school. So you didn't graduate, but you moved schools. This wouldn't apply to 8th graders going to 9th graders. This is if you're already in high school or and you had to change schools, 10 points. This is for girls. So definitely remember, this one's a little bit more private. We're not going to write it down. But if it's that time of the month for girls, go ahead and write down 15 points. Change in religious activities. So you, maybe you started a new church, 15 points. Going into debt. So if you have had problems paying your bills, or your family has had problems paying bills, 10 points. Change in frequency of family gatherings. So let's say that, okay, we're all gonna have that one for sure. Everyone has to write down 10 on this one because we haven't been able to see our families like we usually do because of the virus, right? So 10 points for everyone. And if you went on vacation in the last year, 10 points. presently in winter holiday season. Nope, we're in the dead middle of summer. And a minor violation of the law. So if you got, maybe you got pulled over for not having a seatbelt, running a stop sign, anything that you didn't have to go to probation or to jail. Maybe you got a ticket, speeding ticket, 5 points. Okay, so what I'm hoping is that everybody has a list of numbers, hopefully not too long, but that you have several numbers written down. And I want you to get your phone or if anyone has a calculator nearby, or if you have a calculator on your computer, and I want you to add up all of your numbers. So add them all up and just write it down on your paper and circle it. Okay. If I think I was moving pretty slow, but if I was moving too fast, I want you guys to, we're gonna post this so you can look at it. And what I'd like everyone to do is write down that number and circle it. This is not going to be for you to show anyone. In fact, I don't even want you to don't put it in the chat box. I don't want you to show me. What we're going to look at is what that score means. Now, if you don't have time, in fact, if you don't have time to tally it up now, that's fine. I'm going to explain what your scores mean. And again, we're going to post it. And so after class or later, at a later time, you can come back and see where your score falls. So if you scored a 149 or less, 149 or less, you are relatively stress-free. Your risk of having any health problems due to stress are low. So hopefully this is the range you want to be in, or you want to move towards if you're not there. Any score between 150 and 200 is mild stress. So you have a 33% chance of developing a stress-related illness. So probably anxiety or something like that. Don't worry too much about the stress-related illness, or this is just you're experiencing mild stress. You have been experiencing mild stress in the last year. Moderate score is 200 to 299. If your score fell between that range, you're experiencing moderate stress. I want you to think about, if you're experiencing moderate stress, I want you to really put some of these things into practice that we've been talking about. Self-care, taking time for yourself, doing something once every day to unwind, to decompress, to take care of yourself, for sure. And then major stress condition, if your score was over 300 points over the last year, you've definitely been experiencing some major stress. In that situation, all the more importance is it to reach out to somebody, whether it's a counselor, a family member, a friend that you trust, to start maybe dealing with some of these stressful things you've been dealing with, or talk about some of these stressful things you've been dealing with, okay? We're gonna post this, it's very small, I apologize. We're gonna post this on today's class so you can take a look at it when we are done with class, or you can look at it at some point before next week, okay? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, back to me, okay. All right, guys, how are we doing on time? Okay, all right, so today's class, the title of today's class is Mindfulness Live. Why did I call it Mindfulness Live? Because we're gonna practice. We're gonna practice again. In fact, starting today, I want you guys to practice mindfulness once a day, at least once a day. Now, the good news is you can do it before you even get out of bed, or you can do it right before you go to bed when you're laying down about to go to sleep. We're gonna start again. I'm gonna give you this time, yesterday we did a breathing exercise. We're gonna do that again. We're gonna do it again just for a short amount of time. For time's sake during this class, and because I don't want you guys to get too bored, we're gonna practice short periods of time, but I want you to challenge yourself outside of class to practice this for a minimum of 5 minutes every day. If you can get to 10, great, okay? So what I'd like everyone to do is go ahead and get into a comfortable position. If you've been laying down on your bed, if you're laying down on your stomach, or you're kind of, you know, slouched or something on your bed, go ahead and sit up, please. Sit up to where you're either on the edge of your bed. You don't need to look at me necessarily or your screen, because I'm going to be talking so that you can hear me. Maybe put your camera or your device next to you if you are sitting on a bed. If you're in a chair, even better. I'd like you to sit up, put your feet on the floor. You can put your hands on tops of your knees, and you can put your hands either on top of your knees like this, or you can put them facing up. If you're sitting at a desk, go ahead and put your hands on the desk. Okay, so this is sort of an alert position. We call it mindfulness. You are in a position where you're not too comfortable, because mindfulness can actually be very relaxing, and sometimes you may want to fall asleep. So sit upright. I'm going to give you guys again 10 minutes. 2 minutes. And we're going to focus on the breath. Anytime that your mind wanders, anytime that you start to think about what you're going to do after this class, anytime you start thinking about something you did yesterday or last week, just acknowledge that it happened. Bring the attention back to your breath. We're going to count the breath. So as you breathe in, that's 1. As you breathe out, that's 2. As you breathe in, that's 3. As you breathe out, that's 4. You're going to get all the way to 10 and then start over. Remember, it's completely normal for your mind to wander, but really try to stay focused on your breathing. We're going to go for 2 minutes. Ready? Go. Trying not to change the breath at all, just allowing yourself to breathe naturally. Gently bringing the attention to the breath if you've gotten distracted or if your mind has wandered. Starting from 1 if you don't remember your number. All right, you can stop your counting. I want to transition into something very similar. Now we're going to do a mind-body connection. I'm going to move quickly, but I want you guys, if you choose to practice this specific type of mindfulness after class or throughout the rest of the week, take your time with it. So this type of mindfulness, instead of just focusing on the breath, instead of just focusing on your breathing, I'm going to guide you through the different parts of the body. So again, reposition yourself. If you started to get tired or you noticed your postures kind of going away, sit back up. Let me push back so you guys can. So you want to kind of sit upright again, feet on the floor, hands upright or down on your lap. Okay, so we're going to start with the breath again. You can lower your gaze. Don't worry about looking at me on the screen. You can try to look down to the floor, or you can even close your eyes. So paying attention to the breath now, but we're not counting it. So notice how your breath, as you breathe in, notice the sensation you get as the air comes up through your nose or through your mouth and it comes down the back of your throat. Pay attention to that part of the breath. So maybe you notice sort of a cool sensation as you breathe in, and then the breath gets warm as it comes down your chest. Now I want you guys to bring your attention to your hands. Don't move your hands. Just pay attention to them. How are they positioned? Are they palm up, palms down? Are they sitting on your lap? Are they on a desk? Are your fingers spread out or are they touching each other? Do your hands feel cold? Are they warm? So all of the attention is in your hands at this point, right now. Are your hands starting to sweat because we're talking about them? Now I want you guys to move your attention to your stomach. What's your stomach doing right now? Don't look at it. Just pay attention. Are you hungry? Are you full? Did you just have a snack? Notice your breath down in your belly. So notice just that very slight rise and fall in your belly. Pay attention to that for a couple seconds. Now I want you to bring your attention down into your feet. Don't move your feet. Remember, this is practicing mindfulness. We're just being aware. Are you barefoot? Are your feet sitting on carpet? Are you on tile? Try to see if you can feel the bottom of your foot pressed against whatever's under your foot. That sensation. Try and pay attention to that. Are you wearing shoes, chunkless, sandals? Or are you wearing tennis shoes? Maybe if you're wearing tennis shoes, you have more pressure around the entire foot. Again, are your feet cold? Are they warm? Okay. So we'll go ahead and end that exercise there. I'm curious to see what you guys thought. I'm curious to see if you guys were completely bored and just ditched that whole exercise, and maybe got on your phone and started maybe doing something else, or if that was, if you did go along with the exercise, was it hard? Was it hard to pay attention to those very, you know, whoever pays attention to the bottom of their feet? Nobody, hardly ever. And that's the practice, that is the practice of mindfulness. It's training your mind to pay attention. So that's like a mindfulness training, where you're training your mind to pay attention to different parts of your body, so that when it's time to actually really be mindful in real life, you're good at tuning in to whatever it is, your thoughts, your emotions, the person you're talking to. And so that is something that at least, I want to say at least 3 times over the next week until our next class next Wednesday. I want you guys to try that. You can try it right before you get into bed. That's an easy way to do it. Or you can try it if you get bored throughout your day. To where you are bringing your attention, bringing your mind to different parts of the body. So at first we started with the breath, right? We were focusing on the breathing in and out, not changing it in any way, just focusing on it. We focused on the sensation or the feeling of the breath going up the nose, down the throat, into the chest, into the belly. We focused on our hands. Here's a fun fact. If you get really, really good at practicing mindfulness, mind-body connection, you can actually increase blood flow to different parts of your body. So this may have happened with some of you guys. When we were focusing on our hands, if you felt like a rush of warm sensation in your hands, you actually were actually able to increase blood flow to your hands just by paying attention to them. So that's really cool. We paid attention to our belly, the rise and the fall. We asked ourselves if we were hungry or if we were full. And then at the end, we were focusing on our feet, right? On the sensations in our feet. This seems like, what's the point of this? Why this is, maybe some of you think it's a waste of time. This is actually one of just the beginning stages as you're practicing mindfulness. And people may need to practice this over a long period of time until you get really, really good at it, that you can tune everybody else out, tune the rest of your situation out, wherever you are, and you can really connect with yourself. Next week, we'll tie that into our emotions and how it can be useful to be mindful of our emotions so that we can change them if they've been more on the negative side. Okay. Again, thank you guys for participating. For those of you that did, I know it's really hard to pay attention to your breath for a long time because we're so used to doing it. We do it without even thinking, right? As I mentioned, try to practice that mindfulness exercise, the breathing exercise by itself, or you can do the mind-body exercise. Try to do it at least 3 times. That can actually be your daily self-care if you want to do it 1 time a day. You should feel pretty relaxed after those exercises because, well, you're basically just sitting there and paying attention to your body. And so I hope that for some of you, it can bring you some relaxation. If you guys have any questions, please email me. I do have an office hours, but I'm happy to answer emails whenever you have any questions, or if you'd like to share your experience with me in some of these exercises. Okay, thanks again. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.